My daughter brought a nursing home brochure to brunch and smiled like she was handing me a gift. We were sitting at a corner table at an upscale cafe downtown, the kind of place that charges $15 for avocado toast and serves orange juice in tiny glass carafes. I didn't pick the restaurant. My daughter Sarah did. She also picked the time early Sunday morning, ensuring my son David couldn't make it because he works the weekend shift. That was my first clue. Sarah never organizes family meals unless she wants an audience for a decision she has already made. Her husband Greg sat next to her. He spent the first 20 minutes checking his watch and tapping his leather shoes against the floor. He ordered for both of them, didn't ask what I wanted, and immediately started talking about how exhausting home maintenance is. "You must be tired," Willa Gregg noted, leaning across the white linen tablecloth. "That big house of yours is a lot of work. The yard alone must be a nightmare at your age." I buttered my toast slowly. "I enjoy the yard. The hydrangeas are blooming beautifully this year." Sarah reached across the table and patted my hand. Her touch felt practiced hollow. "Mom, we worry about you. You're 68, living alone in that massive place. It's not safe anymore. We want you to be comfortable." That was when she reached into her oversized designer tote bag. She pulled out a heavy, glossy folder and slid it across the table. The cover featured a stock photo of a silver-haired woman smiling at a puzzle. "Oak Haven Assisted Living. We found the perfect place for you." Mom Sarah beamed. "You'll love the gardens. And Greg and I can take over your house. Keep it in the family. It's the perfect plan." I looked at the brochure. Then I looked at her. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just picked up my coffee cup, took a sip, and reached into my own purse. I pulled a single sheet of paper from my bag, unfolded it flat, and slid it across the linen tablecloth right next to her glossy brochure. It was a printed photograph of a real estate sold sign planted in a familiar front lawn. "Perfect," I replied, my voice perfectly level. "Because I just sold the apartment you've been living in." Greg stopped tapping his foot. His eyes darted from my face to the paper, his mind visibly struggling to process the image. Sarah blinked, her practiced smile cracking at the corners. "What is this?" Sarah laughed, but it was a thin, nervous sound. "Mom, that's our building." "That's my building," I corrected gently. "The condo I bought 8 years ago. The one you and Greg have been living in rent-free while you supposedly saved for a down payment. A cash buyer made me a very generous offer on Thursday." I accepted. Greg's face flushed deep red. He grabbed the paper as if holding it closer would change the ink. "You can't do that. We live there." "Where the hell are we supposed to go?" "You have 30 days before the new owner takes possession," I informed them, cutting a piece of my toast. "I suggest you start packing. Or perhaps you can use that down payment you've been saving for nearly a decade." "You're out of your mind," Sarah gasped, dropping her fork with a loud clatter that made the next table look over. "You're actually evicting your own daughter. This proves it. You're confused. You don't know what you're doing." "I know exactly what I am doing," I countered, wiping my mouth with a napkin. "I am downsizing my responsibilities. You just told me home maintenance is too much for me. So I got rid of my biggest financial drain." I watched the realization wash over Greg's face. The free ride was over. They had planned to put me in a facility and take my home. They never expected me to cut their safety net entirely. To understand how we ended up at that brunch table, you have to look back about 6 months. The shift didn't happen overnight. It started with small, quiet boundary crossings that I foolishly ignored, hoping they would stop. It began when Sarah started using my garage as her personal storage unit. First, it was a few boxes of winter clothes. Then came the old patio furniture Greg didn't want to throw away. Before I knew it, I couldn't park my own car in my garage. When I asked her to move it, she brushed me off. You have plenty of space, Mom. You don't even use the whole house. Then came the comments. Sarah and Greg would come over for Sunday dinner and walk through my home like they were touring an open house. I caught Greg tapping on the living room wall, muttering about how easy it would be to knock it down for an open-concept kitchen. My son David noticed it too. He came over one afternoon to help me plant new rose bushes. While we were in the dirt, he shook his head. Mom Sarah was measuring your dining room last week. She told me her dining table would fit perfectly in that space. I kept weeding. It's my house, David. She doesn't see it that way, he warned. She sees it as her inheritance, and she's getting impatient. Be careful. I didn't want to believe my daughter was actively trying to push me out of my own life. I raised her to be independent. But when I looked at the facts, they painted an ugly picture. She lived in my condo for free. She stored her junk in my house. And lately, she had started treating me not like a mother, but like a stubborn tenant who was overstaying her welcome. I realized I had to change the dynamic, and it had to start with my front door. The next morning, I drove to the hardware store, bought 2 new heavy-duty deadbolts, and installed them myself. I didn't announce it. I just changed the locks on my front and back doors. For 5 years, Sarah had a key to my house coming and going as she pleased. That privilege ended immediately. 3 days later, I was in the kitchen brewing a pot of chamomile tea when I heard the front doorknob rattle. Then, a heavy knock. I looked out the window and saw Sarah standing on the porch with a man holding a clipboard. A contractor. I didn't open the door. I just stood out of sight and watched. She tried her key again, jiggling it violently. A moment later, my phone rang. Mom, your door is jammed, Sarah shouted into the receiver. I have the remodeling guy here to give us an estimate on the kitchen wall, and my key isn't working. I took a slow sip of my tea. Your key doesn't work because I changed the lock, Sarah. Silence hung on the line for a long 3 seconds. You what? Why would you do that? How am I supposed to get in? You knock, and if I am receiving visitors, I will let you in. Just like any other house. Mom, the contractor, is charging me by the hour. Let us in. I didn't hire a contractor, and I am not remodeling my kitchen, I stated firmly. I suggest you send him home. Have a good afternoon. I hung up and silenced my phone. I didn't feel guilty. I felt light. I watched through the blinds as Sarah argued with the man, her face red with frustration, before they finally walked back to their cars. It was a simple action, but it sent a clear message. My house is not yours. Unfortunately, instead of backing down, Sarah decided to change her tactics. When Sarah realized she couldn't just walk in and claim my space, she started a new campaign. The goal was simple. Make me believe I was losing my mind. She came over for lunch the following Tuesday. I unlocked the door for her, keeping the visit polite. When she went to the kitchen to fetch us some water, she was in there a bit too long. After she left, I walked into the kitchen and found the gas burner on the stove clicking fully open but unlit. The smell of gas was already filling the room. I quickly turned it off, my heart pounding. An hour later, she texted Mom. I noticed you left the stove on while I was there. Please, be careful. I'm getting really worried about your memory. I didn't reply. 2 days later, my reading glasses disappeared from my nightstand. I found them pushed to the very back of the guest bathroom cabinet. She was trying to build a narrative. Instead of arguing with her, I opened my laptop and ordered a discreet $30 indoor pet camera. I placed it on the bookshelf in the living room, blending it in with the family photos. The next time she visited, she excused herself to use the restroom. I pulled out my phone and watched the live feed. Clear as day, the camera caught Sarah stopping by the entryway table, scooping up my car keys, and tossing them behind the sofa cushions. She came back into the room, looking perfectly innocent. You okay, Mom? You look a little stressed. I'm perfectly fine, I replied. turning my phone face down. I didn't confront her. Confrontation is what she wanted. She wanted a dramatic argument so she could call me unstable. I just quietly walked over, retrieved my keys from behind the sofa, and dropped them back on the table. The look on her face was priceless. She knew I knew. But it also confirmed exactly what David had warned me about. Knowing the truth and acting on it are two different things. Sitting on my porch that evening, I ran the numbers. My condo downtown was worth a solid amount. Sarah and Greg had lived there for years, paying only the utility bills. I covered the property taxes, the HOA fees, and the insurance. I had essentially been funding their lifestyle, giving them the freedom to afford luxury cars and designer bags while they complained about money. They didn't just want my big house, they wanted me out of the way. I didn't need a lawyer. I didn't need to threaten them. I just needed to exercise my right as a property owner. I searched online and found a reputable local real estate investment firm that bought properties in cash. I called them on a Wednesday morning. I have a condo downtown, I told the man on the phone. It's currently occupied by family, but there is no lease agreement. It's month to month by default. I want to sell it as is. The investor understood immediately. We arranged for him to do an exterior drive-by, and I scheduled a mandatory annual maintenance check so he could walk through the inside while Sarah and Greg were at work. I met him there, unlocked the door, and let him look around. The place was a mess. Clothes everywhere, empty wine bottles on the counter, but the bones were good. He made me a cash offer that afternoon. It was slightly below market value, but it meant no showings, no staging, and no waiting. I signed the paperwork digitally that same night. The title company handled the rest. The closing date was set, and the new owner would issue the formal 30-day notice to vacate. I secured my financial future, completely severed their free ride, and I did it all without raising my voice or shedding a tear. With the condo sold and the paperwork finalized, I turned my attention back to my own house. The garage was still full of Sarah and Greg's discarded belongings. I was done being their storage unit. I bought a roll of heavy-duty garbage bags and a large plastic tarp. I spent the entire Saturday morning hauling boxes of their winter clothes, unused sports equipment, and dusty lamps out to the front porch. I stacked everything neatly and threw the tarp over it to protect it from the weather. David came over right as I was finishing. He looked at the mountain of boxes, then at me. Taking out the trash, he asked, a small smile playing on his lips. "Just reclaiming my space." I answered, dusting off my hands. "You know she's going to lose her mind, right?" David leaned against his truck. "She called me yesterday. Tried to get me to agree that you need a care evaluation. I told her to drop it. She thinks she has this all figured out. Let her think that I said, pouring us both a glass of iced tea." The next morning, the text message arrived from Sarah. "Hey, Mom, Greg, and I want to treat you to a nice brunch this Sunday. Maddox Cafe, just the three of us. We have some exciting things to talk about." I looked at the message. The fake enthusiasm was glaring. She had set the stage for her big ambush. She thought she was going to slide a nursing home brochure across a table and bully me into signing my life away. I simply typed back, "Sounds lovely. See you at 10 a.m. I packed my purse the night before, keys, wallet, and the printout of the signed cash offer for the condo. I slept better that night than I had in months. That brings us back to the table at Maddox Cafe. The glossy nursing home brochure sitting next to my printed, sold sign. "You can't do this," Greg hissed, leaning aggressively across the table. "We don't have the cash for a deposit on a new place right now. The market is terrible." "That sounds like a personal financial problem," I observed, taking a bite of my toast. "You've lived rent-free for years. If you don't have savings, that's a result of your own choices, not mine." Sarah's eyes were wide, filling with angry tears. "How could you be so cruel? I'm your daughter. You're supposed to help us." "I did help you," I replied steadily. "I put a roof over your head. I let you store your belongings in my home. And in return, you tried to gaslight me into a facility so you could take my house. I was worried about you. Sarah deflected, her voice rising. You left the stove on. You lose your keys. I bought a camera, Sarah. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I watched you hide my keys behind the sofa. I know what you did. The color drained completely from her face. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. The fake concern evaporated, leaving only the reality of a grown woman caught in a very ugly lie. Greg looked at his wife, realizing the game was entirely up. I didn't wait for an apology I knew I wouldn't get. I opened my purse, pulled out a crisp $20 bill, and laid it on the table to cover my coffee and toast. Your boxes are under a tarp on my front porch. Please have them removed by Tuesday, or I'm calling a junk removal service. I stood up, smoothed my skirt, and looked at them one last time. Enjoy your brunch. I walked out of the restaurant, the bell above the door chiming lightly behind me. By Sunday evening, my phone started buzzing relentlessly. Sarah had initiated the standard family playbook play, the victim to the extended relatives. She created a massive group text with my sister, my nieces, and David. The message was a masterpiece of manipulation. I am completely heartbroken. Mom is acting erratically and just evicted Greg and me without warning. She's completely cut us off. We're terrified for her mental state, but she refuses to listen to reason. My phone lit up with confused replies from my sister and nieces asking what was going on. I sat on my sofa, watching the notifications roll in. I didn't type a single word. Defending myself would only give her the drama she craved. Then David replied to the entire group. Mom isn't acting erratically, David wrote. Sarah tried to trick Mom into an assisted living facility so she could take the house. When that failed, Sarah literally turned on Mom's gas stove and hid her keys to make her look crazy. Mom has it on video. Mom just sold her own condo to cut off the dead weight. Leave Mom alone. He attached the 15-second video clip from my living room camera. Clear footage of Sarah hiding the keys behind the sofa cushions. The group chat went dead silent. Nobody replied. No cousins offering sympathy to Sarah. No aunts demanding I explain myself. Just absolute, deafening silence. 10 minutes later, Greg drove his truck onto my lawn. He didn't come to the door. He aggressively threw the tarp off the boxes on my porch, loaded them into the bed of his truck, and sped off, leaving deep tire marks in my grass. I didn't care about the grass. Grass grows back. I locked my new deadbolt and went to bed. The 30 days passed quickly. I didn't check on Sarah and Greg's packing progress, nor did I offer to help them move. That wasn't my responsibility anymore. David stopped by on their final day to make sure they actually handed over the keys to the new owner. He came to my house afterward carrying a box of pastries. We sat on the back patio watching the hydrangeas sway in the afternoon breeze. They're gone, David confirmed, taking a bite of a bear claw. They rented a cramped 2-bedroom across town. Greg looked miserable. Sarah wouldn't even look at me. They'll survive, I said, sipping my coffee. And they would. They were able-bodied adults with jobs. They just had to finally live within their own means like everyone else. I haven't spoken to Sarah since that brunch. She hasn't tried to call, and I haven't reached out. Some people think a mother should always forgive, always keep the door open. But I realized that keeping the door open to someone who wants to dismantle your life isn't love. It's self-destruction. My house is quiet now. I don't have to worry about missing keys, gas leaks, or uninvited contractors. I wake up when I want, I garden, and I manage my own finances exactly as I see fit. I am not a victim, and I am not a helpless old woman waiting to be managed. If you take anything away from this, let it be this. Your property is yours, your sanity is yours, and your boundaries are not up for negotiation. If someone brings a brochure for your life, make sure you bring the deed to theirs. My name is Willa. I am 68 years old, and my house has never felt so perfectly mine. Here's the thing, I had to learn the hard way. Love doesn't mean being a limitless resource. You can love your family fiercely while still fiercely protecting your own peace. We spend so much of our lives building a sturdy foundation for our children, but we are never required to let them tear up our floorboards just to build their own houses. Setting a boundary isn't an act of cruelty, and it isn't a punishment. It's just the reality of two adults finally meeting eye to eye in the real world. You don't have to wait for someone to give you permission to control your own life, your finances, or your front door. You just have to remember that you are the one holding the keys. If you've ever had to draw a hard line with someone you love, or if you're just tired of the expectation that women should quietly shrink themselves as they get older, you are exactly who this channel is for. Drop a comment below and tell me about a time you had to reclaim your own space. I read every single one of them. And if this story resonated with you, hit that subscribe button. Let's keep navigating this chapter of life together strictly on our own terms.